Hello everyone, it's me, Tom Bauer, and we are here for our first ever live Q&A for Birmingham Property News, which this week is sponsored by Barrows and Forrester Property Group. And we are talking about all your questions. So whether you're a first-time buyer, whether you're a homeowner, whether you're a landlord, investor, or even a tenant, we're here to help you out in terms of navigating the property market, even in these quite weird times. So today, who are we joined by? We are joined by James Forrester, who is property guru, owner of multiple property businesses, and has been working in the sector for over 20 years. And we're also joined by Hamid as well, who's a lettings manager at Barrows and Forrester, and he has been working in Birmingham in the city centre for the last 10 years. So they've got 30 years experience between them. I'm not even 30, so already we've got a good start in terms of knowledge in the room. So I'm going to jump straight into it. Guys, James, very quick take, because I don't want to go over it because we're still in it, but very quick take on impact of COVID-19 on the property market. Go.
Well, very quickly, it's at a standstill for sales, especially at the moment. You know, we need the surveyors to go back, so obviously we can get mortgages rolling. It's going to start happening very soon. It looks like it's going to be from the 1st of June. We should start seeing a lot more estate and letting agents possibly open up. As long as the R numbers stay down, that's what we're being told, and surveyors will then follow. We're seeing the construction workers go back on new developments. So I think we will start to see a lot of offers from new developers now as well. But for new developers to sell homes, a lot of people part X's. So we need estate and letting agents open, especially because they want to sell the homes as well. So come on, let's get back to work.
Yeah, rather than in kitchens and dining rooms. So how about you, Hamid? What's your take on COVID-19 on the property market, particularly on the letting side?
Well, those have been who have been watching our videos on Facebook and Instagram and even YouTube. We've been rocking and rolling. Things have been moving. We're getting new landlords come to us saying my agent is closed down for the foreseeable future. You know, we've got an empty property. On the flip side, we've also had key workers. We've had nurses from around the country come to us and say, look, we need to move in. We should have moved in last week. We've been let down by our previous agent. We let down by our previous landlord. We just want someone reliable. We just need a roof over our head just to put our heads down. And they are people who are just coming to work here for 3-4 months in the hospitals. You know, in the various hospitals around the West Midlands.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think the next 12 months is going to be very interesting.
Absolutely,
right. Got a lot of questions to get through. I'm going to jump straight into them. So as you know, Birmingham Property News is followed far and wide across the region. We had too many questions submitted, which is always nice to have, which probably means we'll be able to do some further follow-up as well in the next few weeks. And I've tried to, when picking the questions, gone across the city as well, because there's so many different people affected, so many different circumstances. So hopefully you fit into one of the categories of one of the questions today, and just to give you a bit more insight in terms of what's going on in the Birmingham property market. So first question, James, this is a big one actually, really important, because it's not just around property, it's around livelihood as well. So Sarah, who's a landlord in King's Heath, she sent in a question saying that she may need to sell her property that's tenanted to support her full-time business financially due to coronavirus impact. Where do I stand on this and with my tenants?
Oh, great question. Definitely not easy ones then today coming in. So look, government guidelines, very simple, are saying that ideally if you've got a tenanted property, then you want to try and work out the tenant can stay in the property for as long as possible. You're not allowed to evict a tenant currently while this is going on within the process. Now, that's only been up until the end of June, I believe. Hamid might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure it's the end of June. But there is a lot of feedback and noise being made within the industry, which is to extend this longer to obviously protect tenants, because even though it is hard and financially, you know, might be struggling and thinking the easiest way to do is let's sell my buy-to-let property. There is a tenant, there's people's health here that could be at risk, and they need to be cared for as well. My advice would be, look, if you've got a mortgage on that property, get in contact with your lender. straight away. Try to get the relief, explain the situation off them as well. And there is relevant grants out there now as well. So get onto your lender, see if that can help. Does that give you a bit more respite from that? But if you can work it out with your tenant to stay longer, then that's definitely going to be the right thing. You can put your property on the market.
Absolutely, I was just about to say that.
But you can still put it on the market. But the problem you've got is obviously a tenant does not have to open their doors to do the viewing. And it's not something I'd be recommending at the moment because obviously it's clearly not safe to do so. So yes, you could get it on the market, could start getting a lot of early inquiries from people to gain interest into that property. But, you know, it's going to be a difficult sale at the moment. Try and work it out, obviously, with the tenant. Use your estate agent. Obviously, if you can, to obviously be an intermediary, but definitely get onto your lender if you do have finance on that property and try and get some respite from there and get a bit of a delayed fee. I don't know if Hamid wants to add something in there as well.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there from the letting side. If there is a tenant, obviously they're going to be a bit not obstructive, but they're not going to want people coming around to do viewings every 2 or 3 days. Especially if they've got the cough or the temperature. So probably best to hold off. But if you do need to sell it, obviously the best place to speak to is the mortgage company and your estate agent, and they'll give you. I think every seller is going to be a bit different. Not everybody's going to read off the same script. So I think it does need to be a bit more tailored rather than this is what you need to do. But probably the best place to go to initially is your mortgage company and speak to them.
And what would you say? Obviously, I don't know the full financial situation for Sarah, but what happens if, for example, let's say she's got a catering business, and that catering business more than likely not going to go back till August, potentially September, needs money, needs capital, and has, say, for example, 60 to 90k in that property that's on a buy-to-let mortgage. What we've spoken from livelihood from a tenant perspective, and I completely appreciate you don't want to be chucking people out on the street. But on the flip side, Sarah might have a family. What could she do there, James? Particularly seeing as you run multiple businesses.
Yeah, look, it is tough, and like I said at the beginning, people might not like the particular answers that they're going to get. But the tenant has legal rights at this, even if they're at the end of the tenancy, you cannot evict that tenant during the COVID-19 process. It is likely that it will get extended after June. It's not definite yet, but I'm pretty certain, as a bit of a betting man, that it will get extended. So, we'll obviously be putting out some news broadcasts as that comes out to let people know. You need to be looking, if you've got a catering business, it's going to be tough. Look, I've got a lot of friends who are in it at the same time. We're trying to support them, as we can if they're doing, takeaways or anything like that to try and help. But I think very much there, it comes away from the property element side of it. And, it has been announced today, it's hot off the press, they are going to extend the furlough scheme, obviously longer. So if you have got staff within the business, then it does look like there's going to be a little bit of respite there. It might not be what everybody wants, but it's certainly better than nothing, and it's going to help. But there is also grants, out there as well. If you're paying business rates, from there was obviously the £10,000 grant if you're under the rateable value, and you can apply to that. And obviously you've got the bounce back loans as well. And I would certainly get, if you're not 100% sure of how it works, then get in contact with your accountant or someone who's done it before, recently in the last few days, and they'll be able to guide you through the process. From my understanding, it's a very easy process to go through. There was a bit of teething problems, I believe, with a lot of the banks to begin with, but they've now all caught up and they've sort of got their act together a little bit to get businesses that needed money. But coming down to the sale of the property, unfortunately, you're going to be a little bit stuck, with a tenant inside it. Unless that tenant has got something lined up and they can move somewhere else, it's certainly worth having a conversation. You don't know. The property might be too small for the tenant. The tenant might be looking already for bigger properties, and if they're vacant, they're allowed to move. That's what the law states. But ideally, you need to be going through where you might be able to find finance to help the business more than anything else. If the tenant doesn't want to move, then at the moment, the tenant's staying put. But you could get it on the market. Start getting interest early. These are things. Speak to your estate agent. Give us a call. Give Hamid a call. He'll be able to guide you through it as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think you've touched on a really interesting point there, James, in terms of those relationships with tenants. Now, again, I don't know Sarah personally or what the circumstances are around her business, but speak to the tenant if it is a case of, for example, the hypothetical I went there, business is on the line and Sarah's livelihood and her family's livelihood's on the line, and they have to sell the property. Have that conversation potentially with the tenant. Say that we don't want to go. You've been really good tenants. You paid on time, etc. This is where we are. If we don't sell this property, then our business is going to go under. I'm going to have an issue with my family home, etc. Is there something we can work on? So I think you touched a really good point there about communication. And I think that's what people have to do. They have to work with each other, depending on the circumstances. So, yeah. Right, we'll be going into our second question. So we've got Matthew. He's a tenant in the city centre. He was issued his 3 months' notice prior to lockdown. He has been looking, but he has also been furloughed at the same time. He's just wondering what his options potentially could be. Could he potentially stay in his current property because are they going to find someone new to come in at this time, or should he look for somewhere else? Is there better deals to be had? What do you think, Hamed?
Well, as James said in the previous answer, I just think if the property's empty, as in if he's looking for a new property, he is still allowed to move. But if he doesn't want to move, they can't forcefully get him out of the property. I think that's the long and short answer. It just depends up to Matthew what his situation is. Obviously, people are being a bit more cautious with these notices. Landlords do want their tenants to stay. No landlord wants their property empty, especially in a time like this where the uncertainty of getting it filled again is quite high.
Yeah, I think it is. Again, it's coming back to communication. James, anything to add?
Yeah, Hamid's pretty sort of answered that and its head. It's difficult. Look, obviously there's a reason why the landlord served the notice at the very beginning, and it needs to be, what is the answer for that? Yeah. Is it because they've got a new tenant coming in? Did they have a rent review, etc.? Has the tenant not, sort of not got their skates on a little bit, but have been looking at it to say, well, I should have found somewhere earlier. Have they been affected with COVID-19 themselves? Have they had to self-isolate? So it's all about communication more than anything else. So I'd be saying to Matthew is, look, you need to speak into your landlord or to your estate agent, directly and explaining the circumstances. And if you're physically unable to move, for example, Matthew could have been furloughed. He might have had symptoms. He might be working. He might be absolutely fine. But the communication is the key thing more than anything else. Technically, you could still stay within the property. I know landlords are not going to like that. Because they'll say, well, at the end of the contract, but it will just go into a rolling 30-day. And again, it's that eviction process where it's not going to be looked at very favorably and it's not going to be heard on that side. So communication's key. If the landlord doesn't have a tenant lined up, I am sure landlords are not all big bad wolves. So if they haven't got somebody else coming in that contractually they can't get out of, they're going to let you stay and they're going to allow it to roll over. And that's the key thing more than anything else. I've found over, the last sort of 7 weeks now, while this has been going on, all landlords pretty much have all been very accommodating. They know what they're going through this just as much as, Matthew is himself as a tenant. And the key thing is clear communication, working out a plan that's best for both parties, very understandable, and then moving forward that way.
Okay, fantastic. Next question, we have Lisa. Lisa's a homeowner in Albury with her husband. Both have been furloughed, and even though after Sunday's announcements, they still don't expect their industries to be back open till late July, early August. Do they, I know we've kind of half touched upon this, but we're going to go into detail. Will they be able to extend their mortgage holiday further?
You've got to speak to your lender and you've got to speak to your bank. That's the most upfront answer on it. Obviously, we don't all like banks at the best of time. I've got to be careful because I'm sure some banks will be watching this and probably the one that we bank with. But you're going to have to speak to them. The banks have been told, in essence, that they've got to help out as much as possible. So that's the best thing. You need to be speaking to your bank, Lisa, more than anything else, and seeing what they can do. The key thing on all this is that you're still going to have to pay that money at some point. It's not the case. I've been getting a lot of queries coming in saying, well, if I've been furloughed or I'm not at work and in essence, I can't, I don't have to pay it because that's the way it is. That's not the case at all. that money still has to be paid. And what most people are doing at the moment is they're just adding it onto the back end of it. So on a mortgage, it might be tagged on at the back and you've got an extra few years that might end up going on there. But speak to your lender and you'll be, that's easier said than done. You can't always get through to them as quick, but try live chat. They might be on there as well. If you went through a broker originally, reach out to them again, see if they can help you as well.
Yeah, I think that is the case, James, obviously. And I think after today's announcement with the extension of furlough, again, that's going to be the leading policy. So it'll be interesting what's going to come out in the next couple of days in terms of policies that feed off of that, particularly around the rent and mortgage protections and the holidays that are included there as well. So next question. Again, not sure if it's a rental or a purchased property, but Mo and his family living in Handsworth. And he actually says he's finding out the hard way that during lockdown that his house is far too small.
We all want more space.
Yeah. So he's wondering, is now the time to move?
Well, this is a bit of both, isn't it? It's lettings and for sale. So Hamid, you give your take on lettings.
Well, Mo, if you feel it's that desperate to move now, and you know that extra space is going to help your life, then go for it. There are houses out there, there are large apartments out there. That may suit. Head over, have a look on the on the various portals. But if you don't need to, and from a rental point of view, if you are paying a good rent, and you've been there a number of years, you built a family home, maybe. Stay until towards the end of the year. Maybe you couldn't get a better deal. Nobody knows what the housing market's going to do in terms of the rental side, but just keep an eye on it, see what the prices are doing, and good luck with it.
It is that, yeah. Listen, Mo, I feel for you. Obviously, if it's a bit too small and you want to upgrade, but look, that's a good thing. And I've been saying for a while now that this is very much going to showcase a few different things. We're in unprecedented times. No one really knows what's happening. The government are putting plans out, and to be honest, I don't mind speaking my mind. They don't really know what's going on or what they want to do. But I think one thing's for certain: people are going to realise in this that either the house that they're living in is too small, and they're thinking, look, if we go through this again in the next 10 years. Because history seems to repeat itself, and if government can, put draconian measures in place and shut us down again, then I want to be in a bigger property. So they might be looking to move, and they might want to be at the countryside. They might want to be more near canal walks, open park spaces. So if anything does happen, they've got more space to get out to, or more rooms to escape to in the house. For example, from partners or kids or whatever it may be. You're also going to have other elements, which is the sorry state of affairs, unfortunately, where people might have realised that they're not getting on anymore, throughout this, and they will be looking to go separate ways, and they will want to sell their property as well, or they need to obviously be rehomed if it's lettings as well. So there is that side of it, and also I think builders are going to really benefit coming out of this as well, because not everyone will want to sell and move up. They'll love where they live, they love where their house is. And they'll just think, look, it's just a little bit too small, or you know what, we could have done much better with the outdoor space. So they might get builders in to build extensions or landscape gardeners. So I think I've said in a previous podcast, Tom, that you were involved in, that, look, we expect a little slight dip in Q3 from that. And then Q4, we're going to see a bit of a bounce again. So look, Mo, you need to do what you need to do. If you and your family are saying this is too small, start the house hunt now, because this is when to really start looking. You've got the time, get online, speak to agents out there, see what's around, look at new homes, because I think new homes will flourish from this. There's going to be some great offers, I do believe, from the mainstream house builders who will be competing for the business. The new home stats are going to be out later this month, and we're not going to be anywhere near what we're supposed to be building this year. So there is going to be a housing shortage again, over and over, and these are things to look at. So Mo, I feel for you, but you need to do best what's you and your family.
Exactly, and he's got time on his hands, so again, don't rush into any decisions, but you can have a look. That's the good thing about it. And actually, James, on one of those points, I think Rightmove released within 2 weeks of lockdown that garden was the most searched term when setting out priorities for households. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, listen, it's a great point, because gardens haven't really been spoken about, and it's one of them where, look, if you're in the city centres, so for example, if you're in Birmingham city centre, you've got the beautiful canals, to get out there. I don't think the air's ever been as clean, in Birmingham city centre. So for the councillor out there, do we really need the clean air zone coming in? Because obviously the air's that clean, there's hardly any traffic. And there's a lot of beautiful walks. People are getting out. They're noticing things that they've never seen before. But if you're lucky enough to have a garden and you're in the suburbs, for example, then what are you doing to it? Have you had it landscaped? For example, is it turfed? Have you decided, well, actually, we don't want turf anymore. We want to get the artificial grass in so we can use it all year round. We want outdoor heaters, for example, and really start to maximize the space. And I think what we're seeing now online is quite amazing. We've got people coming up with so many different ideas. They're building, homemade, sort of garden bars or tiki bars and things, they're creating more outdoor space. And I think it's amazing. We're starting to see the good old British creativity come back. And I'm absolutely really loving seeing what I'm online.
If anyone knows how to build an outdoor bar, please get in contact with me because I do want one in my garden.
Well, you've had enough time to learn.
Might just have to YouTube it.
Yeah. Look, I have mine installed in my apartment when I moved in. Right, moving on to Richard, who he didn't put which location. Oh, yeah, over in Halesowen, apologies. He has a son who's soon to be a first-time buyer. So he wants to know, is now a good opportunity for his son to get a good deal on a property post-lockdown? And do you think he'll be able to get a lot more house for his money versus before COVID and the lockdown?
Great question, to be honest. I personally believe you're going to get a great deal on this for a first-time buyer. The mainstream developers have been closed. They're all starting to open up this week and next week. And like any business, they are going to compete for clientele. First-time buyers are going to be great for them because typically they haven't got anything. They won't have anything to sell, so they don't need to worry about Part Xing or any of the schemes that they will run through. And you need to negotiate hard. So this is the key thing. If you're going through an estate agent to help you, get the agent to earn their buck and let them negotiate the best deal for you. And if you're doing it direct, I'm from the Northeast, shy Ben's getting out, so if you don't ask, you don't get, so get in there, ask for flooring to be included, see if you can get an upgrade on the tiling. You're probably not going to see a discount on the price. And that's one thing I sort of want to stress. I may be wrong, but I don't think you're going to see a discount on the prices. The models will already be set for the developers for their financing. So you've got to be creative in what you're asking for. Can they upgrade the gardens, maybe a bit of landscaping? As I said, the tiling, the carpets, laminate flooring, for example, that typically, apart from the kitchen and the bathrooms, are not usually included. And a lot of first-time buyers can get caught out that way, but they don't realize it's not. So, see what you can do. Negotiate hard and ask. They might say no. And if they say no, just try and try again.
Don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, there might be things like stamp duty deals as well, which are obviously popular with new developers. But yeah, I think it will come down to those models.
You say that, Tom, stamp duty, we're seeing it being advertised quite a lot. The stamp duty will be paid for example, as well, which is great. Obviously, it depends on the value of the house and what they're going up to, but ask for more. If at the end of the day, there's, you've got your big developers, they're all coming back in force. See what you can get. And as I say, if you don't ask, you don't get. That is the motto here.
Exactly. And if you've got piles of cash that you want to give to them, someone's going to want to take it off you. So make them work for it, definitely. So yeah, on the flip side of that, so covering the rental side, so we have Anita and Paul. They're currently renting in the Jewellery Quarter. They're paying $9.50 per calendar month for a 2-bed, 1-bath. Their tenancy agreement's coming up in July. It's again a stick or a twist here, Hamid. Do you think we'll be able to get a similar property for less in the current market?
I'm stumped there.
So
I reckon you could. But it does probably, if you have to move, I mean, 950 for a 2-bed, 1-bath in the Jewellery Quarter is not a bad deal. Obviously, it depends how long you've been there, and which development, which floor. Obviously, there's various factors. Generally, 2 beds. I mean, if you look for something a bit bigger, maybe a 2-bed, 2-bath, you may be looking north of 1,000. Again, depending on the size, location, and which development it is. And as I said, 950 for a 2-bed, 1-bath in Jewellery Quarter is pretty decent. I think you really got a good deal there. But head over to Rightmove, Zoopla on the market and just have a look, because those kind of websites do show when the properties were first advertised, and when they're available. And if they've been on for the last 2 or 3 months, which I know a few of the agents do have some properties that have been on for a number of months, you might be able to bargain a deal or negotiate your way into a better deal. Or speak to your current agent or your current landlord and see if you can get the rent down a bit. You know, if money's an issue from that side.
Yeah, I think you touched on a good point there. There's bits where I think you can, particularly for example, if you are in a big development in the Jewellery Quarter, 9 times out of 10 you will have multiple properties with multiple agents in the same development. So one might have it up for 950, the other might have it for 900. Well, play them off each other. Let the market dictate, see what's there. James, any tips?
Yeah, look, the Jewellery Quarter is a very popular area. It's it's where Barrows and Forrester's main office is. It's right in the heart of it, sandwiched in between St Paul's and obviously the Jewellery Quarter itself. It's a conservation area. There's not really any high rise. Well, there's no high rise allowed in the Jewellery Quarter, full stop. And you can walk to everywhere. I absolutely love the Jewellery Quarter. It's very pro-independent. This is one of the things that I really love. When everyone comes together, and I think this is the great thing, and it's why people love it. Now, 950 for a 2-bed, as Hamid said, it's a pretty good deal, to be honest. Yeah. Some people watching this and think, my God, 950 quid for a 2-bed, in Jewellery Quarter and get a 4-bedroom house outside. You can, yeah, of course you can, but then you can't walk to, into Snow Hill, for example, or into the canals, or you've got everything on your doorstep. You've got more selection on Deliveroo and Uber Eats and all these things. And this might sound crazy and daft, but people who are renting in the Jewellery Quarter or in the city centre of Birmingham, it's all about convenience. And they want to make sure that everything is on the doorstep and they can get it. And that's what people look for, and it's about the target audience. Now, I think if you're coming into July, which is that right? You said the question was July. So look, July is going to be very different to where we are in May, altogether. There's not going to be a lot of new build entering the market because obviously there's been a slowdown on construction to get things finished. There is a couple of new developments that will be ready by that point. So you could probably negotiate harder a little bit, from that. It all depends on the landlord. It all depends on the letting agent that you're dealing with. At the end of the day, I'm a big motto person on the way we run our company is that, the lettings staff are there to help the landlord and the tenant. It's about getting the right mix. So if you've got happy tenants and happy landlords, rent gets paid, the property's being well looked after, that's a perfect mix. That's what you want at the end of the day, rather than trying to get an extra 20, 30, 50 quid a month, just for the sake of it and having the wrong type of tenant for the long term. So it's all about being sensible. What do you want? Do you want new build? Do you want something a bit rustic? I think people you've got to look at the flip side of this. There might be people in their properties now in the Jewellery Quarter thinking, you know what? I'm grateful for what I've got and I want to stay. So you could also find that rather than there be a little bit of a lot of stock coming on the market, there could be the reverse, where there's not going to be a lot of stock coming onto the market as people decide to stay again for another year. And that's going to be careful. So if you are going to see some good deals out there and it's a good deal, snap it up straight away. Start looking now. If you can get hold of your letting agent, because I am getting contacted by people saying they can't get hold of it, they need advice, and I'm more than happy to give it to help out. But if you can secure an offer now and you're able to put down your reservation fee to make sure that property is off the market for July, then my advice is do it. Don't forget, they can only charge you up to a week, Hamid. Believe it or not, obviously I don't deal in lettings day to day, but obviously it's a week that they can charge, obviously, as a reservation fee. Obviously that all comes off your rent anyway. from there. But put it down, get it secured. Don't let good deals go by.
No, definitely not.
And as someone who's actually live in the JQ, and I absolutely love it, don't move from it. Simple as that. If you are moving, make sure you stay in the JQ, because it's definitely the best place in the city, and that is 100% facts, not opinion. So moving on to the next question, we have John, who's a homeowner in Edgbaston. He's halfway through renovating his house, a mixture of DIY and with contractors. He's wanting to know, how soon can he have contractors round to the property to finish some of the jobs that need doing?
Do you want me to go first on this?
Yeah, go on, James.
Okay, so contractors are allowed in your house if it's safe to do so. This is all on the government websites. It's very easy to check out. Common sense rules do apply here. If you've got COVID-19, you've got temperatures or anything like that, the answer then is they shouldn't be going in. Contractors are allowed to go in, obviously definitely for emergency repairs more than anything else at the present moment in time. And it really depends on what they're classing as renovating the house. Or, is John living in that house at the moment? Because if he's not, then, obviously to get it renovated is classed as construction, and they can go back in the property and get it renovated for you. So that's straight away. And you just got to make sure that social measure distancing is obviously being adhered to. People can wash their hands. They've got hand sanitizer, all the usual things there. If you're living in the property, then you've probably got to look at it and think, do I really need anybody coming in at the moment? And that's where the common sense rules apply. If it's an emergency and you need a plumber, or anything like that, then they are working at the moment. They are classed as key workers in essence. Yeah, they're not the same as the NHS, but if you've got a leak coming from your bath and it's going to flood your house, you need it stopped. Yes, go into your main stopcock and get it turned off, but you will need that plumber to come in and get it fixed. So they can still work. We do have people that we do know who are working in and around Birmingham and the West Midlands. So if people are getting stuck to contact, then certainly give us a call and we'll be able to help out.
Yep. Yeah, and Hamid, do you just want to touch on that in terms of what's it for lettings at the moment, just in case anyone's...
Yeah, for lettings. So EPCs, gas certs still have to be carried out. Obviously, just ensuring that the social distancing measures are in place. If there is a tenant in there or a landlord still in there, make sure they're at least 2 meters apart. I just tell my landlords just to wait outside or wait on the balcony or wait in the corridor or change rooms as I move around the apartment or the house. The interesting one is going to be the electrical safety certificates, which are coming in on the 1st of July. So electricians are still having to go out. That's for any new tenancies starting on the 1st of July. Like I said, so tenants, you will have to allow electricians in, and landlords, you are going to have to let them in because it is going to be a legal requirement for that to be carried out.
Yeah, and we've heard no further news that that's going to be extended either. So
no,
yeah,
absolutely.
If that does change, we'll obviously inform everyone if that's not the case. So John, for now, unless you've got a flood happening in your front room, I would hold fire for now. You've waited 2 months, another 2 months won't do you the greatest harm. No. So, and I completely appreciate that. I've got a stack of tarps here that have been waiting to be done for the last 3 months. So yeah, you're not the only one. I don't feel like making a mess of that either. I'll leave it to the professionals. Right, moving on. We have Deepak in Selly Oak, and he's a landlord. So we have tenants who are currently paying 80% rent due to them being furloughed. At the time, we decided not to agree on how to pay the remaining 20% due to the uncertainty. What do you think is the best approach to paying back the remaining 20%? So there's a couple of options there, really, isn't there? And I'll let you go into detail, James, but they could potentially add it onto the tenancy agreement. It could be paid after. I was
going to let Hamid answer this one first, and then I'll give you my. I'll give you my thoughts after that.
Okay.
So we've had first-hand experience. A couple of our tenants have been furloughed, and we've worked with the landlord and the tenant to come to an agreement. Some have added it on to the monthly rent. Some have said, I've only been furloughed 3 months, so I'm going to pay the shortfall, whether it's 100, 150 pounds, well, the extra 20% in a lump sum after the 3 months, or they can add it onto the end of their tenancy. Some people have said, we'll pay an extra deposit, or you can take it from the deposit. Sorry. So there are various ways. Again, it's just that communication. So you do need to speak to your tenant, just find out their financial situation. See how they're getting on. But obviously, I think you do need to be a bit more sympathetic. Obviously, don't go in there all guns blazing saying, "Where's my rent?" As I know some landlords will do. You just need to work with your tenant. It's probably the easiest answer, and just find out what suits them. Obviously, what suits you as well. And I think between the landlord agent and the tenant, they all need to come together and come to an amicable solution. That's best for everybody.
Anything to add, James?
Yeah, so Hamid's made some good points there. Look, to me, that should have been negotiated at the very beginning, being very blunt. And I know that at the time it might not have been right because, obviously the tenant's going to be flustered with what's going on. The landlord's thinking, I'm going to get less income and my bank's not being too helpful at the moment, because most landlords do have buy-to-let mortgages on their property. So I'm just presuming Deepak does have finance on here, so we'll run with that. Look, there's two elements. The tenant legally still has to pay the value of the contract that was signed on the AST. So what most landlords have been doing is, and rightly of them, they have said, well, look, I'm happy to go to 80% because of the rent, because you're only getting paid 80%, and the 20%. What we'll do is when things get back to normal, or you're back at work earning 100%, because that might actually come sooner. Then we'll be able to spread the 20% over the remaining part of the contract. Mm-hmm. Now, you'll have tenants who have already finished their AST and are on a 30-day rolling contract. So this is where the complications come in, because landlords might be thinking, well, hang on, I've reduced it to 80%. How am I going to get that 20% extra? Because effectively they're going to be leaving the tenancy, and the tenant could, will be legally allowed to do so. So it should have been sorted out at the beginning, Deepak. I'm being totally brutally honest here. But also, let's look at it. There's 20% there. What are we talking about here? What's the value? Sometimes you've got to dig deep, and help people out. And sometimes it might be worth just saying, okay, I'm going to put that down. I'd rather do a good deed and allow the tenant to, not to pay back the 20%. I'm not saying that's what everyone's going to do, but if it wasn't sorted out at the beginning, sometimes it's worth doing that. It depends. If it's only short term, it might be able to be swallowed. Obviously, if it goes on and on and on, it might not be the case. But then communicate. And also, are you doing this directly, or is this again through a letting agent? Where's your letting agent in this? If you are doing it, what are they advising you? This is the key thing at the moment. It's about communication more than anything else.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's really helpful for Deepak. You've given 5 or 6 options there, and I think that's something that to come out of this, there are options for people. There isn't just one choice or the other. You have got that full scope. So plenty to choose from, Deepak. And again, if you need any help following up with that, again, feel free to give us a call or Hamid a call, and we can help you out if you need any. Right, moving on to our last question. So we have
we've got loads. I don't think we get this many.
We've got more as well, because we've got to keep it in 45 minutes. So we'll do another one of these in the next couple of weeks. We've got Jessica in Smethwick, and she is currently in a chain. So she has her properties on the market, and she's had an offer accepted on the property they're going to move into. Where does she stand in her current circumstances? How quickly do you think she's going to be able to move? For her at the moment, a lot of things are up in the air. So what can we do in terms of providing clarity for Jessica in Smethwick?
The chain. This is where it comes difficult. So very straight. Well, it's not really difficult. You've just got to get your head around this is what's going to happen. The difficulty comes of the risk of losing the sale, which no homeowner wants to do. especially in a chain. But the law clearly, currently, as we stand today, states if the property is unoccupied that you're moving to, then you can move to it. You're legally allowed to do so. If you're in a chain, for example, and the properties you're moving to are tenanted, you are being advised via your agent or your lawyers to try to delay the move as much as possible until further notice. And that's currently what the law states. And that's the advice we have to give at the moment. It's pure safety. I know it's frustrating because, you know, if everyone's in the same position, you're thinking, I want to move to that next house. And it can be quite complex because obviously we haven't gone into detail on this chain, but, you know, is the house that you're buying, are the people in that house, are they moving to a house that's unoccupied, for example? So they're able to move, but you're able to move, but the person buying your chain can't, because it all depends how big this chain is, what's included. But look, let's keep it easy. If the property you're moving to, you can go to as unoccupied, then great. If you can't, then delay. You've got to delay the move. That's what the law states. And let's be honest, if people are serious about buying the house, you know, and they've not exchanged contracts yet, then they're going to stick with it. You know, the whole point of buying the house, if it's to move into, is because they really love the property. A few months is not going to change the way that people feel about that, unless, of course, people may have unfortunately lost their job due to this unforeseen circumstance. And if that's the case, then, you know, obviously you're going to have to start the process again. But I hope that's not the case. I hope it is just about communication for you. And then obviously once we start to get a bit more clarity on what's allowed and what's not allowed in the next couple of weeks, then obviously your next house move will be allowed to proceed as normal.
Yeah, and I think, again, talking about chains, is that there is always the risk that it's going to collapse, whether we have coronavirus or we don't have coronavirus. It's part of the business, unfortunately, isn't it? And obviously you never wish it on anyone, but there's always circumstances. It could be a redundancy, it could be a family member gets ill. It's just one of those things, and hopefully, it does get pushed through for you there, Jessica. Right, we've asked all our questions, so we're coming up to the end of our show. I just want to thank everyone who has been part of watching this today. I've been Tom Bauer from Birmingham Property News. We've had James Forrester, MD of several property businesses and self-proclaimed guru of all things property.
Who said that? I've never said that.
I've got it marked down.
Supremo. Never mind guru, Supremo.
Supremo.
Just joking. Just joking.
We also have another property guru in the lettings market. We have Hamid from Barrows & Forrester, who's the lettings manager. And as I said, I've been Tom Bauer from Birmingham Property News. Thank you for tuning in to us, and we'll see you again for one of these soon.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much. See you soon.